to add a few words about the Orville. I always praise it in most of my videos. Sometimes I complain that it's a little bit too similar, the same exact plots that were in other Star Trek shows. So that's a minor complaint when it was too similar and not used as a parody and not made better than before. But overall I do like the Orville, and it's kind of like a remake of Star Trek. It's as if they take the best ideas from Star Trek and remake them maybe a little more comedic way. Now I would rather see something more creative, something brand new which was never seen before, but I also know that that is very hard to do, maybe even impossible in this day and age, simply because almost every possible idea has been done, and so it's impossible to demand someone to make up something which no one else ever thought about before. And so that's also a reason why I forgive the Orville for not always being the most original, sometimes using the same exact ideas, but at least they take the good ideas. Like someone called me a hypocrite a few days ago when I make videos on my other channel showing how much Star Trek Discovery is stealing visual stuff from other movies, and I write in the title that it's a rip-off, and so some guy always comes to my videos and complains, how come when you show Star Trek Discovery you call it a rip-off, but when you show the Orville you just say similarity? So that is kind of funny. That is, I am more forgiving toward the Orville, and I explained in a comment to that guy that the difference is, in my opinion, is that the Orville is taking mostly the ideas. It takes the ideas from Star Trek and remakes those ideas, while Star Trek Discovery takes very little ideas from Star Trek, and instead they take all kinds of cool visual action scenes and designs from many other different science fiction movies and shows, not even from Star Trek, and they're just taking those visual things instead of taking the ideas. And so that's the big difference, I think. It's style over substance. What Discovery is doing is similar to what a lot of new movies are doing, which I always complain about, when they just think about how cool it would look visually and not really thinking about the story itself or the characters and any of that. And the Orville is doing the opposite. The Orville also took some inspiration from the visual stuff, of course. It's very similar to Star Trek TNG, the uniforms, all of that. So of course it took some inspiration, but mostly they take the ideas themselves, and they take only the good ideas. They didn't, so far I didn't see them take any bad ideas except to make it into a joke, to make something fun out of it. But you know, if I look back at the old Star Trek shows, there was a lot of crappy episodes as well. There was a lot of stupid ideas, and the Orville is not taking them. The Orville is taking all the best ideas. And so that's why it's such a good show. So yes, it's not completely original, of course, I agree with this, but it's still a good show. And for a newcomer who never saw the old Star Trek shows, I'm sure he would love it also. You will be seeing that for the first time. It would seem brand new, and so kids today might grow up on the Orville and it will be their Star Trek. And I'm fine with that, you know, especially because of everything CBS did. I don't care about them holding the copyright. I think I think all the people who want to make fan movies of Star Trek should make those movies without all the Star Trek copyrightable elements. So don't use any of the names from Star Trek, do it like the Orville. Use the basic ideas which cannot be copyrighted, like the idea of aliens or starships, or the idea of a federation in space. All of that is not really copyrightable. So do your stories, your new stories set in such a universe without taking anything directly from Star Trek, and screw CBS and all those companies who will sue you and give you trouble for it. And so if they are behaving that way, then screw them. Then don't use any of their so-called copyrighted stuff, which is 50 years old. So how dare they even do that, not let people make fan movies. So screw them, do it like the Orville did. I'm not saying copy the Orville, I'm saying do your own version of the same basic ideas. So I'm totally fine with people doing that, and so that's why I'm fine with the Orville also doing that. The Orville is like a fan series set in a similar universe as Star Trek. And I think those basic ideas should not be copyrightable. I mean, I was about to explain why I think the Orville, what kind of ideas he took which are good ideas. For example, in the previous episode there was that scene of a goodbye party from Isaac, and we see all the crew of this starship. We see that it has a whole bunch of different kinds of aliens and different kinds of people, of course, and they're all friendly with each other, they're all celebrating together, they're all enjoying each other's company. And just think about it for a moment, how nice of an image is it that you see all the different kinds of aliens, some of them very exotic, very different from humans, and yet they're all collaborating, they're all working on the same ship, and they're all living together and celebrating together, and they're all friends. And so how lovely is that? Really think about that for a moment. That image, that is the spirit of Star Trek. Like that idea of the Space Federation, of the alliance of planets, That is just beautiful. That almost makes me cry, that idea compared to so many science fiction, horror movies, and all the worst case scenario, aliens being evil. Star Trek was always special because of this idea of aliens coexisting with us, cooperating with us, being our friends, our partners. And basically, Starfleet and the Federation is a brotherhood of different life forms from all over the galaxy. So this really shows you friendship, commonwealth. It warms my heart just thinking about that idea, that image, that vision. That is something to strive for. Of course, we don't know if there are really aliens, but if there are, of course we would want to be their friends and all of that. How nice would it be? And so that is a lovely idea that we should aim for. And of course, we should do it among ourselves first of all. So that also is something that Star Trek always inspired people to do. Those ideas that so many people grew up with, and I'm sure it made them better people. Because, if since you're a kid you see all these different aliens like Klingons and all of that, like Worf in TNG, they all look so different, so scary, and yet they are all friends together. And so that really teaches you something. That teaches you to respect people no matter how they look like. If someone looks ugly or deformed or like a mutant to you, you would still consider him an equal, you would still consider him your friend. That's what Star Trek taught people, in my opinion. So it showed that people of all kinds can still be friends, can work together. So that is a beautiful thing. So that is something that is in the core of the ideas of Star Trek, and the Orville captured that spirit perfectly, as we saw in this scene of all the people, the crew of the Orville, all celebrating together, and you see a whole bunch of aliens among them, and they're being totally friendly with everybody. So really a brotherhood of all life forms, all in harmony and so on. So that image, that idea is not something that anyone can copyright, and so that's why I think shows like the Orville and what fan movies should do, they should show that kind of idea among many other ideas of Star Trek, and no one can prevent you from doing that, and everybody should be allowed to use that kind of idea. So that's why I defend the Orville against these accusations of stealing things, even though I am critical of it a little bit. When it copies things too closely and not being creative enough, I do blame it for that sometimes. But still, I think the Orville is a great show because it captured the best of Star Trek, all the best ideas. It really understood what Star Trek is about, unlike Star Trek Discovery, which completely missed the point in so many ways. They think it's all about explosions in space, about battles, about cool action scenes, and they totally missed the spirit, the core of Star Trek, which is about friendship and collaboration with other people, other life forms, and the harmony with them, and all those basic ideas. That is the spirit of Star Trek. That's what was missing from Star Trek Discovery, among many other things. I got really passionate about this. So yeah, so Orville gets what Star Trek is, while Star Trek Discovery didn't. So yes, I am more forgiving toward the Orville, even though it's not perfect. And Star Trek Discovery, instead of remaking some of the good ideas from Star Trek, instead it's ripping off other movies which were not Star Trek and doing their own version of that, just to be cool, just to be... They're only thinking about greed, they don't really care about the message of Star Trek. So that's why the show feels soulless, it feels empty, it feels pointless, it doesn't really have a story, it's all about the visuals. And so that's my problem with Star Trek Discovery, which is supposed to be Star Trek. It's not really doing Star Trek, it's mostly kind of borrowing visual stuff and all kinds of action scenes, stuff like that from other movies which are not even Star Trek, not even science fiction sometimes. Like there are some similarities to Game of Thrones in some episodes. And so it seems as if they're trying to catch fans from a wider audience, which is not just Star Trek fans or not just science fiction fans. They're trying to get as much people as possible to watch their show, and so they're cramming up so many things into the show which don't really belong in it. So the show feels almost like a Frankenstein monster made up of pieces from different kind of stuff which doesn't really fit together well, and so it's very noticeable in my opinion. I keep noticing almost every single episode, oh, this is just like that other movie. And the fact that it's so noticeable, that's what bugs me. If they kind of took some inspiration but did their own version of it, that would be fine. But they're kind of directly ripping off things from other places. There is actually a lawsuit against CBS by the guy who made the game Tardigrades, because he says they took a lot of the ideas from his game into this show. Mainly the idea of using a giant tardigrade to travel in space, and also other ideas in his game. And at first I didn't even believe that so much. I thought maybe it's just a coincidence, but after seeing what they do in almost every single episode, that they always take ideas from other places, I do now think that someone in that production probably did take some ideas from there. And it's probably not a coincidence, because in almost every single episode you notice a whole bunch of scenes which are very similar to other movies. And so it also shows a total lack of originality, that they cannot invent their own things, that they have to take something from other movies in every single episode. And so I wouldn't say it's necessarily annoying. Like, I find it funny. I make those videos just to poke fun at that, because I find it kind of entertaining to see how much of it I recognize, and then I put it on YouTube to see other people's reaction, what they will say about that. Most of my videos are mostly for entertainment purposes, and so I'm not trying to promote hatred unfairly. If I show something stupid from the episode, then it really did exist in the episode. So you cannot blame me simply for showing that. So that's my thoughts for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we can discuss it in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.